India's Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri arrived at Beijing on Sunday to kickstart a fresh round of bilateral talks with China following the disengagement of troops along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh. Mr. Misri met with the head of the International Department of the Chinese Communist Party, marking a significant step in efforts to stabilize relations between our two countries. But according to China's state-run Global Times, during this meeting, both sides discussed key issues, including the implementation of the consensus reached by their leaders, strengthening exchanges, and advancing the development of China-India relations. They also touched upon regional and global matters of mutual interest, is what Global Times is reporting. But Mr. Misri is set to meet China's Vice Foreign Minister today to continue the talks, and this visit actually signals an attempt to repair ties that were severely strained following a military standoff triggered by Chinese incursions into Indian territory back in 2020. Earlier, Chinese officials indicated that both nations were exploring ways to return relations to a normal state, similar to the period before the border tensions escalated in the spring of 2020. For further clarity, we have with us Brahma Chellaney on the broadcast. As always, sir, thank you so much for making time for us. Now, in terms of restoring bilateral relations, what would you say are the key diplomatic hurdles India and China need to overcome to restore this relationship to what it actually was before the border clashes?
The two sides have different motivations to mend their bilateral ties, but the underlying Sino-Indian strategic rivalry is clearly a bottleneck. China, of course, is facing increasing Western pushback against its expansionism. Its economy is sputtering. It is running into long-term growth constraints, including a shrinking and rapidly aging population and slowing productivity increase. So it has a clear motivation to improve relations with its largest neighbor, India. But we should not forget that even in the period since Prime Minister Modi and President Xi Jinping met on the sidelines of the BRICS summit on October 23rd, since then, there have been Chinese provocative moves, for example, including parts of Indian Ladakh in two new counties that China has established, or announcing that it's proceeding with building a super dam that amounts to waging a stealth water war against India. So given that background, we have to be very cautious, and I think India is being very cautious in terms of seeking to restore the relationship with Beijing.
Right, but when we consider the intentions of this visit, sir, do you think this signals a genuine desire from both sides to stabilize relations? Or is it more about managing tensions while maintaining strategic leverage?
It's largely from the Chinese side to manage the relationship with India without conceding ground in a meaningful way, which is the reason why even today, India's patrolling rights in eastern Ladakh have not been fully restored. Right. And as the Indian Army chief has said publicly, that the military standoff between the two countries still continues to a degree. So until and unless the border tensions are fully diffused, that China pulls back the forces it has massed on the Himalayan frontier, there can be no border stability or border tranquility.
Right.
These actions of China happen in violation of binding bilateral agreements with India. Also, we should not forget that after the standoff began, China unilaterally, in violation of its bilateral agreement with India, stopped sharing hydrological data on river flows with India. Yes. So there is a Chinese record of turning its back on binding agreements, and that's the reason why India is very cautiously proceeding with the current process of improving bilateral relations.
Well, sir, meanwhile, the Indonesian president's visit to New Delhi this weekend, it suggests potential defense deals. How do you view India's increased defense cooperation with Southeast Asian nations in light of the ongoing engagement with China? Is this the way to hedge against regional uncertainties?
I think inviting the Indonesian president to be the chief guest at India's Republic Day was a very good move.
Right.
We tend to get too focused on few neighbors of ours. We forget that Indonesia is also India's neighbor. The sea frontiers of India and Indonesia converge. Indonesia is a critical partner for India in Southeast Asia. It is a thriving democracy today, and India-Indonesia relations need to deepen, they need to expand, and I think if India-Indonesia Defense Cooperation takes off, that would be good for both countries.
Right, as always, sir, thank you so much for making time for us on NDTV and joining us with your views.